Kettlebell squat progressions. We'll start with some progressions that don't involve a kettlebell that can be used if joints don't feel ready to pick up a weight and squat that way. The very first tool we would use is a strap. So all you need to do is step off camera quickly. Voila! A strap will appear. So you can just use magical French words if you don't have what you need, and it should come up. With the strap, we can use the strap to take some of our load off of our feet. So when I lean away from the strap, it'll take a little bit of my body weight out of the system so I can squat a little bit easier. The strap can be used on its own, slowly lowering down to my squat and back up. The strap can also be used with two other tools. The first one would be a box. So when you set the depth for someone, you can help them avoid, if a particular range engages pain. So you can just take that range out and go near it but not into it. So here I have a box with a block on top, and notice that that keeps me just above that parallel line. So if that's your right squat spot, awesome. That's where you go. That's where we're starting. And you can also remove here, if I'm taking a block away, I can remove and allow myself to come down a little deeper. Progressing away from the box, I can begin to use blocks. So here I'm going to do more free squatting. The squat block essentially mimics a shoe with a heel, and it helps take a bit of the ankle angle out so that, again, I'm squatting a little bit easier into my squat range because I don't have to rely on ankle immobility or anything else along the system that's keeping me from squatting deeper. It just makes the things a little easier. Normally, it's at the ankle. I have a 2x4 here that's just sanded and stained to make it look nice. But I also have a 1x here that I can use as a bit of progression as you're working toward being able to squat easy on flat feet. So you have a strap, you have box, you have blocks. The blocks or the box can also be combined with a kettlebell. Now the first hold when we begin loading a squat that we teach is a boulder hold. And to describe that, I'll come up nice and close. Think about grabbing the bell by the horns and then moving your hands down into an OK position. So I'm carrying it like a stone. I want to bring my palms to the belly and then pick the weight up. The handle can point at or rest on the top of my ribs. I keep my elbows squeezed in, my shoulders down, so that I'm creating some structure underneath the weight, trying to tie the weight as best as I can to my body. So when I add that to the squat, again, this can be done with that box for depth. This can be done with a squat block to help my range, or this can be done flat-footed. Things to think about with all of the squats. Squat stance is going to be different for everybody. You usually have folks walk out to about shoulder width and get their feet underneath their shoulders and having a little bit of turnout. For most of our bodies are going to do a lot better with just a little bit of turnout of their feet. When you're squatting, knees track with second toe. So think about opening up your stance and sitting inside of your stance, of your squat stance, not on top of your legs. So if your legs just go straight forward like this, you're not going to create enough space to squat inside of. So a little wider and make space to sit inside of. See how my body is inside the frame of my stance. Abs stay strong to keep my spine long. The other big leap that we have in energy is breaking at the spine. So I might be turtling upstairs or butt winking, tucking my tailbone downstairs, usually a combination of the two. So I don't want to break my spine line. I only want to squat down. Strong abs, tall spine, move your pelvis first. Pelvis sits back and then sits down. And only come down to that place where you don't lose your spine line. If you go try to shove yourself a little bit too deep, you lose that spine line, then that's too deep for you. Don't go down there. You may find that over time you can go a little deeper, but don't make a rock bottom ass to grass squat the end all be all of squatting. You don't have to squat that deep to get a lot of value of it. And especially if your joints aren't having it, don't force it, don't force feed it to them. So find a spot, even if that means for you, it's a partial squat. It's not to parallel, fine. To parallel just means hip and knee are gonna reach into a straight line, so your femur is gonna make a straight line with the floor, and then anywhere below that would be a full squat where you're sitting below that parallel line. From boulder, we progress to a rack squat. The way the rack helps our squat is that now instead of carrying the weight, we're gonna rack it on our body a little bit. I'm still carrying it with my arm, and any front-loaded squat is gonna require a lot more, not a lot more, but it's gonna really require you to create some center tension to keep your spine line and keep your upstairs connected to your downstairs. So keeping tension in the center and keeping that weight close to my body. With the other arm, I can either freehand it or I can bring a cradle. So we call this a rack and a cradle. And here, all the other rules apply. Squatting down to a depth that's good for me and coming all the way up. You can also manage where the strength is coming from by foot pressure. Pushing more through heels, more hip. Pushing more through the toes, it's going to be more in the knee. Toes and knees, heels and hip connect. So you can change where you are making your emphasis based on where you're changing foot pressure. And then lastly, the last progression would be taking two bells. And here you're going to have a clean in order to get them both up, because you can't help it and work it into place. Two bell means I'm going to clean it up, and my preference is to overlap handles and then grab them with my hands. Some people might like to interlock. Either way is fine. You do the way that feels good to you. My preference is to put one over top of the other and then squeeze them together and connect the weight. I'm still trying to keep the weight on my body. As I come down, absolutely, positively fine to roll my shoulders up to keep the weight on my body and keep my body on my legs. What I'm trying not to do, though, is to flare my shoulders out to the side and then pick up tension in my traps and start carrying it with my arms and my shoulders. I don't want to do that. I can roll my shoulders up to roll the weight up on top of my body. Keep strong, keep good engagement, and put everything together. Whenever you're doing a front-loaded squat, it is going to have a lot more upper body. Really better thought of as a whole body exercise than just a lower body exercise. Especially with the front-loaded squats. Front-loaded squats can help you sit up a lot taller because you need to stay underneath the weight versus a back-loaded squat allows you to lean forward. So think about staying tall. But that's a progression all the way up to a double bell squat. Don't get caught up in depth. You find a depth that feels good and secure for you. There are other progressions, so if none of these work for you, talk to a good coach or good clinician to help you find a good squat if these don't work for you. But that brings you from a bodyweight squat heading toward a weighted squat all the way up to a front-loaded double kettlebell rack squat.